First item of business is public comment. Seeing no public comment, the next item of business will be approval of the minutes of July 21st.
So moved. Second.
Comments?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr.
are these the minutes with the joint? I do have a problem with number 3. My feeling is that the McVeigh House...
What page?
Oh, I'm sorry, page 5, item number 3 under the joint comments. I don't know that my understanding at the meeting was not that it was going to be relocated as a done thing. I didn't get that at all. I would have made a point of, if that was the case, I would have made a point of commenting on it then.
You're correct. They said that they know they probably got to move it. One suggestion was this. I got it on. One suggestion was the site that that they discussed, but that's not for sure. It's still up in the air.
Relocated.
I'm sorry?
Would you like it to say if relocated? It will
Yeah,
be better?
yes.
Okay.
I think just put an if in there.
You have to wait, Callum. Okay.
Or it says the McVeigh House is not compatible with the current site plan. Well, that's probably true. There's many things maybe not compatible with. Maybe if relocated would be all we need to say, just to put the if in. And then there was something, the historic issues, number 7, the restoration of the original building is much appreciated. I think that there's a bit more to it. My feeling is that the cluster of little structures that house the seismic equipment next to the Fleischmann is also historic. That stuff dates from at least the 30s. Those little buildings that used to be the laboratory, you could go look at animals, and those are kind of those are the intimate buildings that I don't want to see just ignored. I think that little courtyard is kind of a critical place. So, and I didn't. What did I see? So that's.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to defer to the chair of that session. I don't know what was stated. If this was the motion, we cannot change the motion.
No. So, well, I guess we could just maybe I'm just jumping the gun. Maybe that can be dealt
Excuse me,
with when.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Commissioner Drury, there was no motion. This was
There's just comments. Oh, I
this was
see.
comments. So if you feel that it's missing a comment, we could.
It was more than just the main building, it was also the Fleischmann Auditorium.
I mean,
Yes, and
And I
then
remember those buildings you're speaking of.
Yeah.
Speaking from an historical standpoint, they were there when I was in high school.
yeah, they were there. Yeah, so that and they were not included. So I don't know if we could just wait until the plans are presented in a formal way.
I don't know if I can speak to this. I do know that the city has designated as structure of merit that entire street frontage, the stone wall, Fleischmann, the connecting part between Fleischmann and then the 1930s and 1920s buildings that goes along.
Right. Well,
That is not part of the structure of merit
the
designation.
intent of what they were showing was that the period of significance would be 1926 through 1937, which is when the auditorium was done. So their intent was to bring that back to that period of significance. Now, those other buildings came after that. They are old. They've been there for a number of years, but they're beyond that period of significance, and also, I believe, would be still within the creek area, which was part of the problem. But this was just comments. It's not written in stone. They just had a plan. They wanted to get a feel for what you felt about it.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Suning.
Excellent job on the minutes, by the way. They were very difficult, I'm sure. On page 5, under biological issues and creek restoration, number 12, if you could just add creek to the beginning of that sentence, I think it makes it a lot more clear. Creek restoration is a function and can be achieved within varying setbacks. Page 6, under emergency access, number 19, second sentence, supported turf block for the driveway and asked that the fire department consider the alternative paving. And then number 20, just encapsulate the living desert in quotation marks. And that's all. Good job.
Incredible.
Wow.
Any other? Yes,
Madam
Mr.
Chair?
Oops, Mr. Sharp, sorry.
Page 9, item number 5, comment number, on motion on number 4, it should not have the by in there. Recessed windows, 12 to 14 inches.
Yes, Mr. Peugeot.
Yeah, a few. But first, I also want to mention that these comments from the Planning Commission, they are really very nicely summarized. It was a long meeting. There was a lot being said. And sometimes we get like 6 pages of this and that. And whoever worked on this, I think it was very nicely put. You know? I just want to mention that, yeah. Because it was a long meeting. And I think it's good that it comes down to a short thing. Okay, corrections on page 8, item 4. The motion continue to the Entrada de Santa Barbara and add the word subcommittee. And on the comment number 3, add the word arcade. The arcade finials need to be toned down and refined. And end the sentence there, put a period and eliminate the rest of that. And on comment 6, I believe it's the elevator tower. The elevator tower is possibly too high. That's comment number 6. The next page, page 9, on the motion, this is La Suen Road on number 6, eliminate the window sill splay unless it is significant, because they were proposing a 2-inch splay, which was ridiculous. So, so if the inch is the window is down 14 inches, then maybe it could be splayed.
Are there any other comments? Or yes, Mr. Adams.
This is page 8, 35 State Street, down at the bottom, item 7 in the landscape. Item A in there, it says research the lawn due to its proximity. That should say research the lawn material. And then on item C, just below that, it says limit the lawn area by softening the edges with plant material. That sentence should be complete. Limit the lawn area by softening the edges with plant material.
Thank you. Any further revisions or additions? Seeing none, all those in favor of approval of these minutes as amended?
Aye.
Opposed? I abstain. Thank you. Next item of business is the consent calendar.
Madam Chair, item A, 206 East Anapamu Street was indefinitely postponed at staff's request. Item B, 735 State Street was final approval with a condition. Item C, 224 Chapala Street was final approval as submitted. Item C, 2717 De La Vina Street was final approval as submitted. And item E, 320 East De La Guerra Street was final approval as submitted. Those were reviewed by Commissioner Sharp, with the exception of item E, which was reviewed by Commissioner Suding.
Make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? That motion carries. Next item is announcements.
Commissioner Schallenberger and Murray will be absent today. And then just another reminder that 34 West Victoria Street project will be reviewed by the Planning Commission on August 12th. Commissioners Drury and Adams volunteered to attend that hearing. Commissioner Adams? Is that on your calendar? Hello? Yeah? Okay. Just want to make sure. And then the entire commission is requested to view the story polls on Tuesday, the 10th, because that will be coming back to you at a later date, so you do want to see the story poll installation.
34 West Victoria.
34 West Victoria, Tuesday, August 10th, story polls. That's all I have.
Thank you. Are there any other announcements or? Yes, Mr. Suding.
Seeing that the last item is at 3 o'clock, I just wanted to mention that I will have to leave by 5:15, just in case.
Well,
I'll go
let's
over.
move it right. Let's. Yes.
I'm just hoping we don't, but
Yeah.
just in case, I have
Thank
to leave.
you. Any other announcements or requests? Seeing none, the last item would be subcommittee reports.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
The El Encanto Subcommittee met on 7/28/2010. We reviewed Mission Village, particularly the site. That's what the applicant wished to present. Just to sum up some of our comments, we wanted them to explore changing the oval configuration of the pathway. The progress that they made with respect to the overall philosophy of the site and its topographic solution was much appreciated and has moved quite a bit in the right direction. The opening of the garage at the driveway needed some restudy, and then we also requested that they insert the current Mission Village site plan into the overall site plan. That's all.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I don't know, maybe I should have done this under announcements, but that's okay. The sign committee has been disbanded,
Yes.
and it has gone from having its own staff to dumping it, pardon me, on the staffs of ABR and Landmark. And two of us will be, Natalie Cope, who's the chair of the group, and I will be looking at signs in EPV, and we'll report back to the commission, and if we have any problems, we'll bring them to the commission.
Thank you.
And we'll be meeting at 9 o'clock before the regular HLC meetings.
Oh, thank you for taking that on.
I love it.
Yes, Mr. Peugeot.
Regarding subcommittees, I would like to say this. Just seems like when the full commission sends the project to a subcommittee, it seems like the subcommittee needs to really work with the applicant and arrive to a conclusion. The subcommittee really likes the project, and then it comes to the full committee, fully developed and ready for approval or to move on. Now, of course, there's an exception. If there is a disagreement, if the subcommittee and the applicant do not agree, then it's valid to bring it to the full commission and explain, look, some of us feel this way, some of us feel the other way, and so forth. But what I think is not very productive is to have these things being half reviewed, and then they come to the full commission, and it doesn't have the support of the subcommittee, or the subcommittee has not seen the final piece. And it goes back and forth. It just seems like a really fat waste of time. So I think it just seems like we're going. It would be more practical, and if it goes that way, so that before the project comes back to the full commission, it has the full support of the subcommittee, and they have seen what's going to be presented, and everybody's happy and ready to stamp it. I want to say that because I think some of these reviews are getting to be too lengthy and really not very productive.
Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Suding.
With respect to the subcommittees that I am on, we wholeheartedly try to do that. We wholeheartedly try to get the applicant to step up to the plate and get it to a point where we're all happy with it, and then we bring it to the full commission. Sometimes I've noticed what has happened is that they bring other things to the full commission that we haven't reviewed, and we, it's beyond our control. I will reiterate next time that I see them that they are not allowed to bring something that we have not reviewed and given our blessing to. But it's oftentimes that's what happens. It slips through the cracks like that.
I would like to add a point of clarification. Sometimes in subcommittee we ask for things, and then they show up and they haven't really responded to the subcommittee, and they appeal to a fuller commission. I've seen that occur in a few instances, and sometimes that happens. So again, the burden is on the applicant in that case.
Thank you. I'm going to move on to item number 1, which is the archaeology report for 415 Allen Road.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Dr. Glatzel reviewed the report and concluded that the investigation supported the report's conclusions and recommendations. That because the proposed project would not have potential to result in significant impacts on prehistoric or historic archaeological resources, no mitigation measures are required. And the standard condition regarding discovery of unanticipated archaeological resources would apply to the project. And that condition should be on the plans prior to issuance of building permit.
I'll make a motion to accept the report.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That motion passes. Thank you.
I would like to comment that Figure 2, at least on my copy, was illegible. I could not read most of the lettering. I couldn't see the lot sizes and so forth. So it should have been clearer, I believe.
Yeah, it is.
Well, I think it also should be clear for the final package, too, because it as a public document, it becomes somewhat...
Well, actually, it's not a public document.
It's not?
No, not the archaeological reports. They are under lock and key, actually. But it should be, if you can just resubmit the exhibits.
For the final city.
Yeah, because this is
I'd
blurry.
appreciate doing that.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. I can. Next item of business is item number 2, 1111 East Cabrillo Boulevard. Concept review continued.
I believe the architect is outside.
Yes.
Oh, we're good.
Cameron Carey, agent for the applicant.
Henry Lenny Design Studio.
Raymond Ermer, Slumber Al-Ghazi, Executive Architects.
Thank you. Would you like to start?
Sorry. Well, we read your comments and hopefully we responded to the comments that we made. I have a lot of photographs here to show you. And so why don't we just jump right into this. Here we go. Okay, that's a good place to start, the pool area. There were a number of things that we did, and one of them, beginning with the rail, the 42-inch high rail, it's just not traditional at all. It never was. In fact, the rails were actually rather small. And so one thing that we did was to actually raise a curve and then put a small rail on top of it to try not to lose the mass, while at the same time providing the safety. Then the other thing that we did is that we slightly tapered the wall towards the rail, and you'll see a detail someplace in there. And then as far as there was a comment that was made regarding some of the windows, and we changed the windows to more rectangular configuration, and the spot's going to be behind it, and so the suggestion was to use a stained glass, leaded glass type of a pattern there. And then the only other thing that we did is that this is there, and we can't help it because there's some mechanical equipment behind it. But from a distance, it doesn't make any much difference when you're standing this close, but from a distance we actually carried down the piers to the bottom. Just to make sense. And then we were left with a bit of a void in there. So one suggestion that, or one thought that we had, and let me find the photograph for you, is that originally this building was heavily modified. In fact, this whole loggia was never there. And you can see that this was the principal entrance to the hotel. and that was designated by this shield. So what we thought is that we can actually reproduce this shield on a much more basis and place it where that void is currently. Otherwise, that blank wall kind of bothered us all a bit. And so, then what you see on this end is a gate that leads into that little patio area. That is a wooden gate. We reduced the height of the wall that was originally proposed to be about 5'4", or it was, I think, proposed to be about 7 or 7.5 feet. But we don't have to have it that high. And the idea was to cover it with the vines completely. And there's some fig vines that are growing on the building currently, and so just turn that into a landscaped sort of area. So that's that elevation there.
Wait, what is this representing?
Flowers.
That's flowers. Okay. They look like cereal.
Oh, cereal.
And before we go on, can you explain to me the congruence of the plans to the elevations? Because I don't really see it in your proposal.
Well, it's in the plans are actually shown on the pool. And maybe we should look at that as well. Well, let me just do this since it's easier.
Oh, is this not the, I mean, are these not
sorry.
the plans associated with this?
It is.
And so I'm looking at these columns, but I don't see them
No,
here.
that hasn't been brought up yet. Well, it did. Let's turn to the modified plan, and that is the pool plan, because that does show exactly the plan relative to the elevations. Okay.
They are there still.
Yep. Let me see what I did. Oh, that's not the one, is it? Okay. That is the one. So the piers that you see are here. The windows, the leaded windows are here. The patio area that you saw is still pretty much the same as it was shown originally. And now that we're here, can we talk about the pool area? What we thought is that we can actually generate a diamond-shaped pattern with a rock salt finish at each of the darker squares. And it's similar but not the same as what you would have at Casa de Herrero, because we can't have that kind of texture. It has to be much more subtle than this, but this is just to show that this was a very traditional technique to begin with. The idea then, as far as the pots are concerned, is that we would have 3 pots, either they're flax or whether they're orange trees, or we'll have to look at that. But the idea of the pots would be to have them fairly large throughout, and including here. There was a comment that I think, Phil, you made that we should try to attempt to put some trees in the ground, and we chose this corner here, and it just has to do with weatherproofing. And there's some substantial damage that the walls have currently caused to the building. So the idea also is to have the pots large enough that you can actually fit in some chaise lounges and tables in between the pots. And that would reduce the amount of umbrellas and that sort of thing that we will have to show ultimately. So this is actually what we're proposing on this. The coping is new, but the coping would have some sort of a profile, and it would probably be gray, I think. As far as the color of the concrete, I think we're fairly open. Traditionally, of course, it would have been a gray concrete. and we're fine with that if that's the case. But the pattern of the concrete would have enough difference, visual difference, while at the same time we have to be careful with the health department because you can't have any water accumulating. And so that's why we thought that the rock finish would be a rock finish and a broom finish on the other would be a good solution to that.
Thank you. I'm going to read the comments from last time. I'd like to remind the Commission. Continued 4 weeks with the following comments. Regarding sheets A1.2 and A3.4, there's concern with how the glazing is filled in and another solution should be explored. Restudy the wrought iron balcony. There's concern about hiding the arched opening, which is a characteristic feature of the building with the proposed screen wall. The openings proposed on the screen wall should be appropriate to the architecture. Sheet A2.1, the proposed double sliding doors would not be a traditional way of breaking up the wall and is not supportable. A2.2, the existing should remain as is or something similar should be proposed. 3.3, it is preferred that the plaster on the balcony remain. In the pool area, the way of paving and pattern are mixed is too contemporary. A more traditional approach should be proposed for the paving. The plant palette is appropriate, including the proposed palm trees. The planting should be into the ground wherever possible instead of being placed in pots. Do you want to talk about some of those comments that were not?
Well, let's begin to talk about the arch. This building is fairly new. And so the arches, all the arches that you see along Cabrillo Boulevard are contemporary. And let me just going to show you. I took a photograph of a couple of photographs of it. This was the original entrance. This is the wall that used to face Cabrillo Boulevard. It's been heavily modified, this thing. Remember Buddy? Turned the whole thing into a birthday cake. So this is all new. New meaning probably the 60s. This thing here was done probably 80s, I think, 90s. Pardon me? 1982. Yeah. Yeah, and we worked on that as well. So. Not the loggia. So thus, I don't believe that those arches were ever traditional, especially the way they were done, because they're elliptical arches, and the original arches were full spring arches. And so I think, in my opinion, the more we hide them, the better, I think, until we can correct that. So that addresses the issue of the arches, and the other issue, the other way we address that is by actually lowering the wall, and rather than making it look like a wall, we made it look like a hedge, basically. And the purpose of that wall is to somewhat reduce the noise from Cabrillo Boulevard. As far as the windows or the proposed French door on the second floor. That is exactly as the
Can we see that while you're talking about it?
Yes. That's on the elevation. That would be the Cabrillo. We're talking about this sliding glass door up above. And let me see, there's a photograph, a close-up photograph of that. Those doors were, and the windows that were changed were apparently approved recently by the HLC, and so we were just proposing to use them. They're metal-clad windows and doors. They are sliders, though. And so we just thought that we should just continue with that as well. Not all the windows and not all the doors have been changed in the hotel, but staff can correct me if not, but I believe they were changed quite recently.
I saw the plans out there, and I'm trying to remember the date, and honestly, I can't remember.
Okay.
Not real recent, but maybe about 7, 8 years, 10 years, somewhere in there.
Within the last 10 years, they've had several rolling projects of doing 10, 15 or so at a time, something like that.
So I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt you. So we did see that first, and then we skipped over what
Okay.
you did not have a chance to show us, and
All
since
right.
we'll be looking at these too.
This is the elevation along Cabrillo Boulevard that shows the arch behind the wall and the landscaping in the foreground. There's quite a bit of landscaping, and I'm sorry for the quality of the pictures. I took it as I was driving with the window closed.
Driving fine.
Yeah, and so I just wanted to see that sort of thing, and you can see that this is the entrance here. It's a relatively small area. But I thought that, again, instead of introducing a wall white, that it would be better to show a wall low and filled with vines.
More cereal.
And more cereal at the bottom. What landscape architect is going to have to suggest some things there? Right now, there's a bit of a hodgepodge of landscaping throughout. Well, just there's just
Enough said.
Okay.
And again, can you link your plan to your elevation?
Yes. What we're looking at is standing, well, driving, looking at this in this angle here, and this is what this fuzzy picture shows. This photograph here shows where the arch is and the landscaping in the foreground. And, let me see, I have some other photographs here. This is another good one. Here is almost a direct shot to that. So we're looking at it. Yeah.
That's the entry door shown here, and then that's the low wall covered with the vine wall.
In addition to that, if you look at the light fixture, we're proposing a light fixture above that, and that would look, well, this is Barcelona light fixture that we're proposing.
Okay, next. I think, yeah, unfortunately, there are multiple. If you'll just kind of try and remember. Or,
So I think one other thing. By the removal of the wall, what we're proposing is to putting a wainscot at the bottom to give it a base. Yes.
Painted.
Painted. That would also reduce the reflection on that wall to the chaise lounges that would be immediately adjacent to them.
are you complete?
So far with this.
All right.
And then we have the other building.
Are these elevations relevant to the elevations we're seeing?
These are the
hardline elevations that we prepared showing the existing and proposed.
Yeah, there's a few things.
I think, well, we'll get to that, but, okay.
I think there's one more elevation.
Yep.
On this elevation, we did something similar to what we did at the other end. The principal reason for that is that when you're standing inside the room, they wanted to get some view of the ocean. And right now, currently, this wall pretty well blocks that. So the compromise there was to do what we did at the other end, was to put a base wall and then put the ironwork on top. And that would give, that would take care of the issue of privacy if someone is actually laying on the deck. and while at the same time increase the view from the guest rooms. Let me shut this
Thank you. I'm going to ask for public comment. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, I'll ask for... Oh.
And Madam Chair, there are some details that I'd like to discuss whenever you're ready.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, Chair, too. Okay.
I just wanted to comment on the windows, the so-called improved view. The Landmarks Commission has to think about the view from the street, and if you have I mean, maybe this will work, but you don't want to look like any other motel that has balconies that face. So I would go for the retention of the wall. I mean, if people want to look out, they can go onto their porches and look out. They don't have to look. I don't think from places I've been, you don't need to look out at the view from the middle of the hotel room. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the Commission?
Yeah. I have a question about the pavement. So you said it's rock salt. So really what that is it's sort of voids. It's not so much aggregate. It's rock salt that gets washed out. So it really becomes void. So it's really not like a stone texture. It's just kind of a shadowed texture, if you will, just under the surface. Just clarifying that. And on this plan, just so we all understand it, the cutout for the in-ground planting materials from here cut into this geometric configuration right here. That's it. The rest are, the large proportion pots. Okay.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Suding?
While I'm looking for what I'm looking for, did you check the rock salt finish with the health department, environmental health? Last I checked, they weren't allowing that on a public pool.
We struggle with that at the Billboard. They will accept some minute indentations.
Okay. I don't want you to be caught off guard because last time I checked.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And the idea is that would be just subtle enough to be able to tell the difference between each checkerboard.
Right. Give it a little bit of texture. Okay, and then on page A-1.2, the door that's shown on the entry below the medallion looks like it's changed in your rendered elevation. Are you proposing to change that to more of a plank door?
Not yet. And the reason I say not yet is because I think the Hyatt is looking at the entire hotel to make some improvements.
Okay. And then the last question I have, on the existing spa plan and the proposed spa plan, number 1 and number 2, I noticed that the thickness of the wall, granted it's an interior wall, but that's the original corridor, correct? You're changing the thickness of that, is that right? So the thickness is
Ray, can you
about
see that
3
one?
feet probably, 2.5 feet, and then, maybe, thank you, Suzette, sorry.
In an effort to add this shower and bathroom to the spa treatment room, we would be modifying some of the column enclosure. We believe it's not all structural, so it's more. Some of it is more decorative to carve out this area for the shower inside of the spa.
Madam Chair, one quick question.
Yes.
Okay. This looks different from the existing conditions. So you're planning on kind of opening that up and taking away some of the vertical plant material here to make it look like that, or I'm not sure what the intention is.
No.
There's the wall, and I know that's an addition.
That's the only thing we're doing. And then the light fixture.
So this remains, but I can't tell if that's one or two plant materials. Anyway, vertical accents. This would remain on this side of the door here.
Yeah.
But
There's
I'm not
one,
sure.
this, what do you call that?
Borderline.
Yeah, that's existing, and I think we will remove that.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know,
Yeah.
just to kind of open that up
Yeah,
a bit.
Yeah.
Reuse it.
Well, we can reuse it. Can you reuse that kind of?
Yeah.
Coeur d'Alene.
Are there
you.
any further questions? Yes, Mr. Peugeot.
On that cabana, I mean, you're converting for that wall facing the pool. In some places you have square columns, and some you have round columns, and in some drawings you have they are engaged and some they are detached. What is your intent? Or which one is the?
So sorry about that, because I think that still has not been coordinated. The CAD drawings with these drawings. The idea is that it's a pier in a very subtle pier is what you would see. Now this can come out even further if we wanted to accentuate that more. And if you remember, Alex, this lines up with the piers above, and so the round columns would either be buried inside the wall, and we're going to thicken this wall in order to accommodate what we're doing. So the wall will end up being about 18 inches thick, approximately.
Okay, thank you.
So can I just clarify again? You have CAD elevations in here and you have hand-drawn elevations. What are we supposed to be looking at?
May I suggest that you ignore the CAD drawings altogether and just look at the preliminary elevations? Because we still have to go through a process of coordinating.
So we're simply looking at the elevations, not at the plans and not at the CAD elevations, because the plans don't coordinate
I
either.
see that. Yeah.
Okay. Comments, please. Yes.
When we saw this last time, there was a railing up on the upper floor that was going to be removed and turned into a wrought iron. I don't see that shown here. If you guys decided to not do that,
We're not going to touch that.
leave the original material. Okay, thank you.
Comments, please. Yes.
I like the way this application is moving. I think the applicant has responded to most of our comments, and I think this is, in general, is going pretty well. My only question is whether an equivalent amount of landscape remains around the pool. I understand the need to avoid moisture and all those issues. And I just leave it up to the landscapers in the board to resolve that, because sometimes maybe the size of the pots, and maybe those pots can become raised planters or some way to control the moisture. I would hate to see those things shrink so much, and I'm not sure if there's enough there to create some sense, give some sense of nature to that court. I think the other improvements are acceptable. The change of the railing, I don't have any problem with that. I think it's a compromise, a good compromise. And I trust you that you will resolve the issues with the engaged columns to everybody's satisfaction. I like the gate that you use at the spa. The idea of the low green wall, it kind of works. So, positive comments in general.
Thank you. Mr. Suding.
On the Cabrillo Street elevation, I think I don't have a problem with the wall covering it with the vine, but I think that since we're losing some of the character there, that I would like to see that door replaced now. It's just such a plain door at this point. And maybe I wouldn't have noticed it if you hadn't have shown any planks. I don't know, but I really think that with the addition of this wall and the sort of obliteration of that window behind it, we need to see some more character there on the street. I am a little bit concerned about the loss of the thickness of this wall on the interior, and I know that it is an interior and we don't have purview over that, but I just wanted to bring that up. And then my last comment would be on the pool plan. I think that you could introduce some smaller pots as well with lower plant material. I like the pots that you've chosen. I think they're great, and I like the scale of them. I think they'll do fine to support those palm trees. But introducing some lower or smaller pots in there, not a whole lot of them, just enough, also brings those pots down a little bit more to a human scale and a little bit more comfortable. Not that they're bad or wrong. I think they need to be that big for support of those palm trees. That's all, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, I'll just follow up on that. I like the paving approach. I like the pattern is working for me, and not that I'm designing it, but look at grays, but look at warm tones. Again, you're contrasting to the blue of the pool and things like that. So look in that category, and it looks to me like the subtle checkerboard pattern could be interesting and work for your drainage as well. The other thing I would suggest is if you're going to remove that cordyline, move that over to that pool courtyard if there's an opportunity.
Where?
Somewhere in here.
Oh.
Because actually cordyline is a good silhouette plant. I think it'll look good in combination with palms and some selected smaller pots. I really like the railing approach. I think it works very well for me at this point. So.
Other comments?
Yeah, Madam Chair, just to follow up on that, that's a good comment, Commissioner Adams. There are also two quarter lines within the interior of the pool, so we use those as well. Not in the interior of the pool, but in the interior of the pool enclosure.
Any other comments?
Madam Chair, I do
Yes.
have a couple of
Thank you, Mr. Sharp.
comments. Regarding changing this, I don't think you need that particular column. I know this is more spaced further apart than this, but I think that one interrupts it. It doesn't relate to anything. I guess it's part of what's there, but I think you can take that, and I realize, that not all the drawings are accurate with respect to the columns, but
You're thinking about both ends, Don? On that end and then the other end as well?
well,
Just that
Oh, okay.
second one in from the right, right? Correct?
here, these almost appear to be the same, and here, so just if you took that one out,
I see what you mean.
it would more align to the others, and then I don't think you particularly want to have a shadow at the top of the plaster right here.
Right.
I think you want the shield or the medallion to go above, and that would interrupt it, of course. And anytime you can clean up some of the existing conduits and downspouts and all the other problems, please try and do that. And the fact that none of the window unit air conditioners are shown, I'm assuming you're taking those out?
No, I just didn't show them.
Wishful
It
thinking.
ruined the drawing. Maybe in the future, I don't know.
Well,
No, they're going to remain for now anyway.
okay.
We're looking at a lot of things. We talked about that.
We talked about it.
Can we move this application? Or do we need or there's some environmental assessments, or where are we?
Commissioners, the coastal exclusion was submitted, hasn't been completed yet, so you could give it preliminary approval and continue it to the consent calendar. Want to do that?
Yeah, does anybody want to see this? Unless it goes to consent, or everybody confident the way it's going? Okay, motion for preliminary approval with return to consent. Are there any findings that need to be made?
I guess you could, you could make a historic resource finding.
With historic resource findings, and this would be an indefinite continuance.
I'm sorry. I just feel like I need the motion summarized before I vote on it. Is that agreeable with the maker?
Yeah. Well, yeah. We're going to make some the comments. Are there comments added? Is that what we're
Yeah.
talking
The
about?
comments that we've all made. I think those should be summarized if the chair doesn't mind. And
I'll do what I can.
okay.
In general, I believe the commission likes the way that the direction of the application. We would like to have you replace the door at the Cabrillo Street per the elevation. And the pool, there's a suggestion that you introduce some smaller pots with lower scale plants in addition to the larger scale pots. The paving pattern and plan is acceptable, and suggestion is to look at warm tones and grays. The suggestion is removing the cordelines in various locations and replacing it in the pool area.
Or just how about relocating?
Relocating the cordelines, the existing cordelines. And there have been suggestions regarding the spa elevation in terms of removing the second column from the right at the balcony. A request to clean up existing conduits and downspouts. Did I miss any ones?
Did you want the core lines relocated to the pool area? Is that what you
No,
said?
apparently not.
Relocate it.
Yeah.
I think it would be fair to say to incorporate it as much as possible in the pool area, and then, but in effect, relocate the removed cordelines to other areas on the site where appropriate.
Thank
But
you.
I think one could go in the pool area. That at least one, if not two, if not three.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll second that motion then.
All those in favor? In opposing, I oppose.
On what grounds?
Incomplete drawings for preliminary, incomplete drawings for conceptual. I will not pass on something like that. All those abstaining? None. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next item is 1900 North Wayne Road, preliminary review. Thank you.
Oh no, it's M&M time now.
Saw me coming and you went, no.
I don't know. I think it's carrot.
Okay. We are here for preliminary approval of Mission Village. Bill, do you want me to ask you for your comments on Mission Village before we? All right. While we're waiting for the applicant to be ready, I'm going to ask the chair of the subcommittee to summarize the subcommittee's comments at our last meeting.
Pardon me. Thank you, Madam Chair. This was from the meeting on 7/28. Bring the Interacta renderings to the full commission. Interacta was a brand name, basically. Explore changing the oval configuration of the pathway between Cottage 31, 32, 33, and 34A. The progress made with respect to the wall height of the garage and overall philosophy of the site is appreciated and has moved in the right direction. Continue studying the length and configuration of the wall to the north of Cottage 32 and 33. The opening to the garage at the driveway needs to be restudied. The arch and break are not traditional. The design should take inspiration from a bridge. Pay attention to the interface of the retaining cheek wall to the arch. Insert the current Mission Village site plan into the overall site plan. That's it, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I just have one quick comment. Because they're requesting preliminary, I wanted to alert you to, there's just one condition of approval about canopy trees. Back in June of '08, the commission requested that the project include 6 canopy trees at a size of 36-inch box to be in the Mission Village area. So we kept that condition and put it in the conditions of approval. So I wanted to let you know that that is part of the project.
Thank you.
Requirement.
Will you introduce yourself to the record? And
Trish Allen with Suzanne Elledge Planning Committee.
Casey Nagel with Gensler Architects.
Your mic is not. Right there.
Courtney Miller with Katie O'Reilly Rogers Landscape Architects.
thank you.
So I'm going to quickly go over some of the changes that we made in subcommittee, just so Alex and Louise and Robert kind of get up to speed with the change from the last iteration of the site. So I'm going to, unfortunately, this sheet's I only slipped it in this middle one here, but it's showing what we presented last time. It was basically the exterior wall, which at the time was, the first time we presented was 541.6, which was consistent with Henry's original conceptual. We dropped it down to 539.6, and what we've done is by reconfiguring the topography of the site, we've brought cottage 30 up, and we've actually lowered cottage 31 and 34A down. And we did this by increasing the slope across the entire plane here from 2% to 4%. And there's also changes within the garage itself, where it was sloping 2%. Now it has portions sloping at 5% and 2% where there's ADA access required. And so what it basically did is it dropped the leading edge of what is along this line right here at the monumental stair, roughly 2 feet. And then this point out in space here where the corner of the wall was at 539, we're now down to 533 because it's actually sloping down. There are a few things that were asked for in subcommittee last time that haven't been addressed yet, and that was the feathering out of this slope right here at the at this kind of tunnel to the garage itself. We're going to try to slope this out to more like a 4-in-1 slope and continue this wall and curve it a bit further around. And you can also see in this image we've reduced this so that it's more like a bridge. Previously we had shown it much higher, and we're going at a different way to actually protect this boundary with barrier planting and railing that's buried inside of hedge. The other major changes we showed, was a revised stair design and the retaining wall here at the southeast corner. Southeast corner, again, this is the previous plan we're showing on top right now. But by basically taking this grade and actually restoring it to what is actually more like what's happening down the side of the property, we were able to reduce back this retaining wall significantly. And so this wall back here is roughly about 10 feet. The wall here at the stairs is roughly 12 to 12 and a half feet. And we've added a planter here to help kind of grow plants onto this wall and to help minimize it.
Right here, midway.
Yeah, I think it was your suggestion that we put something in here to mitigate this wall right here. And so I'll just go a little further. You can see just a little bit more detail on the stair and the entry. The one nice thing also about we really tried to wed the edge this curving stair into the landscape. So actually there's really no requirement for a guardrail on this outside area because there's not a significant enough a drop. What's not shown is a handrail, which would be very minimal in that area. So I think it really very much lightens the whole railing effect that we had previously bounding this property.
Did you bring those renderings?
Yes, yeah. So we'll move on to these were the renderings. Actually, there's a little bit more detail in here than we presented last week. There was some aspects of the architecture that were colored differently. And the one change that
Excuse me, could you use the page?
oh, sure, we're at A0007. Back here in the southeast corner, we previously were showing this as being stucco in here. Katie wanted to go stone in this area just to make it further recede. So these give you an idea of the kind of the mass and scale of being in these spaces that have been created. We did a further aerial rendering of the entire site. Now, the difference between this and this is on A00.06. What this allows you is actually is a more of a true perspective, where we've been showing an axisymmetric, which tends to show buildings a little bit more the same size amongst each other, so you don't really get the depth of field that you would get from looking at the buildings from a distance.
Up in the air.
Yes. So these renderings are still showing the original circles that we were that we had shown previously. I think when we get into the landscape portion, I don't know if we should transition into presenting the additional. There was a request to see more of the site and paths and the driveway.
Why don't we continue to see it? Keep going.
And then we can maybe drop back to the buildings.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to take this one?
I'll get in the middle.
Yeah.
But if I could find our sheets, maybe that would help.
I'll grab one.
Are we in the end? Okay, on the landscape set, we added 2 new sheets. As Casey said, there was a request to see the overall site and the context of the buildings in relationship to the paths, and how everything fits together. I believe there was also a question about, the use of these roundabouts and whether or not they were located elsewhere on the site. So that's what this plan is intended to do, is to give you that context. And it just reflects the same thing as our blow-up of the Mission Village area. So that's that.
And you can see that we're showing a planter now on the side of the drive as it comes into the building itself.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, so the entrance, you're talking about shielding the entrance to the garage, right?
Correct.
So it will be seen from where? Like if you're walking over here, will you see it like that, or shielding something?
Well, we have a sheet that shows a blow-up of that area,
Okay.
so if you'd like, I can flip to that and we can discuss that. So this is, again, another additional sheet that picks up on the western side of Mission Village and shows you the length of the driveway up to Mission Ridge Road. We've got 2-foot-wide planter areas on either side of those retaining walls with vines and ground cover that can grow up onto the wall.
And this is at grade, or
It actually slopes. It slopes down this way.
But right here,
and then
this is
here.
a wall, right?
Yeah.
This is a retaining wall, correct. This will slope down, and then I believe it slopes down further this way.
But
as
there's
well.
no walk here. I mean,
No.
you can actually
Right.
can walk from here to there, right?
Correct.
Except that it's planted, so there's no. Yeah, okay.
Correct. There's no pedestrian access, but it is at grade.
And here you could go that way. You could access-
Actually, no, this is another retaining wall condition here that connects to the existing retaining wall here.
There's about a drop back here.
It's a considerable drop.
So that's much higher here, a lot higher and much higher than this.
Yeah.
Correct.
And you kind of meet somewhere around here.
Right, and this is actually Max Lane left this part of the drive roughly as it is. I think the previous civil engineer was going to redo the walls, all the way down. In this scheme, we're really only doing this part down.
While we're on this, what is this? That's an oak. What are these? Any idea?
That would be on the other plan set, and I don't recall specifically what it is. But we were really more focused on the new landscaping that we're showing adjacent to the drive for this particular plan.
Should we go back to the buildings then?
Unless you wanted to take a
Oh,
look
I'm
at
sorry.
the other landscape sheet showing the
Already
actual
in?
Mission Village.
Yeah.
So as Casey said, we are still showing the circular walkway condition. It's still being worked out. That's something that Katie would like to present to you at the next meeting. So really the only change since the subcommittee was this patio here. This door was previously here, so it just shifted, and the addition of more screen planting on either side of these retaining walls and a hedge on the top.
Another thing that might not have been picked up in the last subcommittee meeting is that in changing the angle of the deck here, we've had to relocate some of the ADA accesses. We had previously had a door into this cottage here, but due to the proximity and the slope between the two, we made the primary entrance to this cottage 31 at this level at this door, the patio entrance here. We had a similar situation here on cottage 30 where we had been entering in at the patio, and right now we've actually brought it off the circle and it's entering off what is basically the north end architecturally.
So that was a comment from before. We had two patios here and just kind of eliminated one of them, and that became the front entry. And I think everything else has been reviewed, so.
Thank you. Should we go back to the
Sure.
buildings then?
Go back to
Can
the-
we ask some questions while we're
While
on
we're on
landscape?
landscape?
I
Might as
think
well.
that would be helpful. Can you describe the wall north of 32 and 33? What's happening with the height of that? And at the subcommittee, we had asked you to study reducing the length of it, breaking it somehow. Can you talk to that, please?
The wall to the north of 32 and 33, that again is one of the things that we have not addressed yet.
Okay, fair enough.
I can tell you what the height is if you'd
Fair
like to know.
enough.
but-
Well, yeah, actually, I would like the rest of the commissioners to hear about the height of that.
Okay. On either end, it pretty much dies into grade. So it starts around 1 foot, increases to, at the max, I believe it's 8 feet. Behind cottage 33, reduces back down to about 7 feet as it curves around 32, and then slopes back down to about 2 feet. And then there was a condition of approval regarding 6 36-inch box trees, which can be represented by this symbol here. So we have 6 along the north slope and about 4 more on the southern edge of the Mission Village.
And what are those trees? The 36?
Right now, we're just calling them out as canopy trees. They could be, a sycamore, oak, or, any of the others that we list on our plant list here.
Back to the buildings. Thank you. As we move there, I'm going to read the comments about the buildings. All buildings investigate the location, number, and size of the light fixtures, knowing the applicant must observe ADA restrictions and make note of the appropriateness of their location. Study the locations of the gutters and downspouts. Application of details should be more pertinent to each building and should not be sprinkled indiscriminately throughout. Building 30, the building is approved under the direction of the subcommittee and the architect's response. It was suggested that support of the cantilevered landing at the stair be widened, another layer to be added underneath the base, and that be a feathered back. Reduce the depth of the balconies so that they are still functional but more proportionate. We're looking at 30 now?
Yes, we are.
All right.
Okay, so since we've had two subcommittee meetings in two back, we came back with Henry and we did a series of sketches, and Henry and I have had a few working sessions since. And so what you're seeing is a reflection of the subcommittee and with Henry's review of this project. So if we start with the north elevation, you'll see that this is actually where the new main entry is to the quay that I described in the landscape plan, and also with what we've done to mitigate the height of the soil at the garage, and we've got more of a buried sort of courtyard in the back of Cottage 30 on the north side. Going to the south side, you'll see consistently actually through the entire drawings now that gutters and downspouts are being shown, and scuppers for deck drainage. What we had previously shown as a bracket under the arch stairways has become a feathered back arch as suggested. The balcony on the east side has been reduced so that we're only showing 36 inches of the railing, and we're using part of the structure to actually hide the height so that it seems like it's more like a traditional 36-inch balcony. These balconies are just standing out far enough that a door can be opened. And consistently through the entire project, all the buildings have now gone to a 2x8 structured wall consistently on the perimeters. And there are locations in the site where we've gone to 14-inch walls on doors, which is kind of starts to become our maximum for ADA. And you'll see on the south elevation there's a window design that had been suggested in subcommittee, and also different treatments of the chimney caps.
Do you want to go through each building and make questions and comments, or go through them all?
I like what I'm seeing, so we can move on.
All right, let's keep moving then.
Whatever you want.
Great.
All right.
So I'll move on to 31 then.
In this, the mass Vulcan scale is working well. In order to add character, suggested the roof plate heights and slopes vary. With respect to integration of details, in particular the north elevation, use fewer, more consistent details applied in a functional and logical way. Therefore, when awnings are in use, show how they are functional and what they cover indicate their depth and width. The chimney termination is too large, and explore adding thicker walls in places for window and door recesses.
Okay, so on Cottage 31, we did raise the plate height in a place on the east, and it shows it best on the east and the west elevation. That seems to make sense with the entire roof. We chose a door treatment that Henry felt was more appropriate for this kind of parapet wall here with a light above it. We reduced the size of this balcony It was a little wider at one point. We did maintain the canopy that was tied to the balcony. I think it helps to create a little variety in how the balconies are expressed and the awnings. And there are, let's see, it's a little harder to tell. Unfortunately, going to a 14-inch wall wasn't really giving me, in rendering, it doesn't really give me as much. We're starting to deepen walls where we can afford to in the project, but the model doesn't really seem to give me the punch that probably they would do in real life. So.
Are there any questions?
So this material, it's all iron.
Correct.
Okay, with that base
Right.
plate.
With a kind of a clavo detail on
Clavo
the
detail,
inside on the inside of the kind of U-shaped. Should we go on to 32 or?
Shall we go on to 32? Or?
Sure.
Are you showing gutters? Are these gutters?
Yeah, that's gutter
downspouts?
and downspout right there.
And those are what, copper?
Yes. 3-inch downspouts and 4-inch gutters.
Here as well.
Correct.
And one quick question while we're on here. How wide is this planter?
It would be on the east elevation. That is, I would say it's probably at least 3 feet inside.
Shall we move on to 32? Oh.
Okay. All right. So now we're moved on to 32. We're looking at the south and west elevation. And so on the south elevation, we've gone with a more traditional Monterey style balcony. This one's expressed with very heavy corbels underneath it. We had a larger steel balcony at this location. It was made smaller, and there are a few windows in I believe both these elevations that are deeper than they have been previously. We did vary the plate height. We brought the middle up at least a foot from where it had been previously. And I think it has probably more of an effect on the rear elevation than it does the front elevation. That being the north elevation. Should I move on to the other two elevations?
Yes, please.
Okay, so right now we're looking at the north and the east elevation. And you can see in the east elevation we did some further study on the curved stairwell, which maybe I should drop back to the plan real quick. Basically, I think it's a little more generous in that we eliminated a closet that had been a pantry closet, which I think was really kind of an unfortunate sort of entry to be coming into. So I think that's a much more appropriate entry for these two keys here. And what we were able to do is capture some space on the north elevation. You can see this door where we can actually do some storage for this cottage itself for housekeeping and what we've done is in bringing up the roof here on the north elevation, we've actually stepped back this portion on your right of the north elevation so that we get kind of a better breakup of this building than had been there previously. And then basically you see here is the retaining wall. And this, at the point where this is cut, maybe about 8 feet back, we've got the retaining wall here, and then we've got the grade would roughly run about on this arc right here. So really, this is, from a short distance back is what you would see of the building.
Thank you. Should we move on to 33? Please do.
On 33, both Henry and I kind of agreed that there was actually quite a bit of roof variation on the front ridge line, or not ridge line, but the front line, that to actually start manipulating the top of the roof, I think would be kind of overworking it and maybe would make the building seem more like the other buildings. So we kept a very simple roof line on this particular building. We did increase it to 3 and 12, which I think helps helps to balance the building out better. This has a slightly different variation of a Monterey balcony from it. It has a little lighter corbel underneath and some brackets on the inside corners of the top. We also reworked this balcony right here so that it had deeper arches, or not deeper arches, but higher arches, and changed the doors and windows out to an arched door and window. We also, above that, previously it had one large window and one side door. We've gone to three glass light doors to kind of simplify that. One thing that's not shown is there is actually a planter that should be here that I dropped off somehow.
Question.
Sure.
What is that line around the wall? Is that you're thickening the walls right around?
There was a comment in subcommittee that this balcony was getting very close to adjacent buildings. So if you drop back to plan, we actually created a recess so that we had, I believe, about a 5.5 foot balcony, that was usable on the second floor.
Is it this one?
But
I see. It's recessed.
yeah, so we recessed it to,
It's in outie.
Yeah.
Got it.
Okay. And so, moving on to the west elevation, we had previously shown this balcony detail, which we, in talking to Henry, we pulled from the next elevation we were going to look. But as I studied where it was used in the project currently, it was generally used in covered areas between posts. And so on this, the west elevation, and let me move on to the north elevation. We used this detail as it was used elsewhere in the site. Henry also suggested we use a scallop detail on these balconies, which is yet again another detail that's used elsewhere in the site. I think it helps to break it up a little bit. We did bring down we did shed this roof down and create a natural overhang over these doors. This niche here was enlarged so that it seemed more balanced. Before, it was kind of just capturing the door itself. And you can see the grade line of roughly what's happening in grade about 5 feet back from the building. And there's actually a retaining wall running underneath this cantilever balcony here. So you can see it here, and if you go back to the west elevation, it's right here, and that's the cantilever balcony.
Would you like to move on to 34, or are there questions?
Can you explain that cantilever part? How many feet does it cantilever? Is it?
I believe it is 5 to 6 feet. It follows the. Let me go back to the plan. Sorry, I'm looking upside down. So basically, this portion right here is cantilevering. So there's a. Actually, the wall comes out like this. So it is.
You can see it on the landscape plan.
So basically the retaining wall goes like this, and this portion here is cantilevered.
Over the retaining wall?
Yeah. We were trying to prevent, bringing the soil directly against the building and bearing on the building.
Yes, Mr.
Just a quick question on the east elevation. One more, I think. What is this protruding above the rail there?
It's actually, that's the scallop railing you see in the
That's
distance.
taller than the railing around this?
Well, this has to be a bit taller because what you're seeing is the little top pieces. So it's the top of the scallop you're seeing.
Here?
Yeah.
What's this?
That's where it returns.
There's a little return right here.
there.
Yeah.
If you look at it on plan, you can see it returning.
Yeah.
That's what I
Yeah.
thought it was, but I didn't think
Right.
that it needed to be higher. But I guess it does because at the bottom of the scallop is where it needs to be.
Exactly.
And this isn't scallop?
That is on the edge of here. I thought that we could scallop it on these pieces.
Oh, no.
But I thought it was more appropriate. I don't know if adding one of these starts getting to be too much on this end piece.
I don't even think you would notice that really sticking
Yeah.
up. I just was curious more than anything else.
When I looked at it last night, I thought it was a drawing error too. So.
Well, I didn't want it to be a...
Should we move on to 34?
Yes.
Please.
Got right to.
Yep. Sorry.
That's a little awkward.
Okay, so on 34, we also raised the plate height of, you can see on the west elevation, on your right side, this section of roof has been raised, and we kept the section on the left lower, and we've been kind of struggling with opening up this landing and not making it so dark. What we chose to do was to bring the arch from the corbel and kind of bring that same shape in up here in order to create an opening that we looked at very round arches and it seemed to compete with the curved stair below and the shape of this balcony bracket as well.
So, this is this steps back.
Correct. That's a landing and the stair into the quay up there.
And this...
You find it?
This lands into the wall.
Okay.
Yeah, these are in the same plane. Perhaps we should notch it and just, either not have a railing cap on it or stop it on either side of the wall.
So, and then, just so we know,
Sure.
we're on this is what, this surface here on top of the wall?
It's form stucco.
Form stucco. Okay.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions on building 34?
Yeah. Go back. This is it.
Yeah.
Okay. Where is this lantern? Okay, we're looking at the west.
Mm-hmm.
Where is that lantern in a full frontal view? Oh, here it is. Yeah. So how does that lantern work? Is that attached just above the door and drops into the frame?
It's probably something like this.
Yeah, it's got a bracket on the wall like
Has a
that.
bracket.
Right.
So this is getting pretty close to the top of the door.
Right.
To me.
And if that door opens out, we would have to raise that.
Okay.
They seem kind of puny.
And one other question while we're on here: how thick is this stair wall, stucco wall?
On the east elevation.
There it is. Thank you. Thanks.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Suding.
Why are we using raised planters, or what's the thought behind the raised planters that are attached to the building? Ms. Miller?
Well, we're limited on soil depth on the podium level, so the planters were intended to give us enough soil to achieve larger plant material up against the building and kind of balance out the building elevations, and that's it.
Thank you.
If we're done with the presentation, I'll ask for public comment.
We've got one more.
Oh, all right. 34.
So this is 34B.
I'm sorry.
It's all right. So, beginning with the north elevation, 34A pretty much covers this this portion of the building, and we've revised the elevator tower with Henry's help. So this looks different than you've probably seen it before. Before it had a kind of a scalloped kind of top to it. It's been simplified a bit. And since we've looked at it in the subcommittee, probably the major changes again are the addition of the entry to this key being over here on the south elevation, as opposed to being on the east side where you couldn't see it from the path. And I think aside from chimney caps and probably more detailing on the balconies. And I think we brought these roofs that had been tucking underneath, this balcony this roof over the balcony. The roof had been tucking under. Now it's kind of an extension of a shed. And then you see also the new stair as it relates to this elevation on the west, the stone stair and landing.
Are there any questions about 34?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Suding.
On the south elevation, I'm not quite understanding the shadow lines on these columns. So this face of the column is behind this face? Yes.
Yeah, you're going to go to a plan. They're kind of pilasters that are...
Is that, okay, then is that... You go to the plan, yes, please. Is that column then freestanding, or does that hit the wall? We'll see the plan. That's it right there. Okay.
And we
then
inserted
this
benches
is-
underneath and that's above.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Are there any other questions on 34B?
Yeah, this west elevation, again, what is this material? Is this a stone?
Yes, it's
something?
stone. Yeah.
And this is a exit from the parking?
It's also the entrance to the elevator. There's the door to the elevator right here. So if you were, you need to go to the podium level through in a wheelchair, you would go through that entrance. And you would get onto the podium from this level right here.
Okay, and then is that another 3-foot planter on that tower?
Yeah.
And then I guess I'm assuming that the plant material that is shown on the elevations isn't necessarily the plant material.
No.
If you're going to have a 3-foot deep planter,
Yeah.
I would hope that we would get taller plant material and then
No, I just felt it was hard for me to read well as a planter in the drawings. So it was my feeble attempt to get in your field of work.
Are there any more questions on 34B?
Yeah. This exit, what is that width coming through the arch?
It is at least 36 inches, if not 40.
36 inches. And the height looks like, what, 6 feet?
It's probably more like 7'6", because when you have that arch...
To the top?
Yes.
To the top?
Yes.
Okay.
In case, may I ask about this little buttress thing?
Mm-hmm.
How thick is that?
I believe it's shown in the drawings about 12 to 14 inches. It might be best, actually, if I go back to the aerial.
I see.
It should be fattened.
I see. Okay. If there are no longer a presentation and no more questions, I'm going to ask for public comment on this.
Is there going to be a landscape?
There was a landscape.
There was.
There was. As we were going through that, she showed us the whole Mission Village. There's quite a bit of detail.
Okay, I want to comment on that.
All right. Well, I'll have Mr. DeForest come and then Mr. Martinson after Mr. DeForest.
So these. On DeForest, I have two landscaping suggestions. One is, I believe that the stone walls, and they seem to be more naturalistic, the stone wall should use the rectangular cut stone that emulate the historic walls of the Riviera, especially the walls there on Lassuane. So they should all tie into the overall Riviera design. And on the patio between the buildings, to mirror the rectangular design of the historic pergola, the certainly should be considered a rectangular patio area, or at least one done outlined by straight lines, and the fountain similar to the patio that's in the El Paseo behind the De La Guerra house, and also then the fountain and the pool and the fountain should be more traditionally Moorish in design and use a hexagonal pool and a hexagonal fountain. This would better reflect the Spanish revival design of the Mission Terrace. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Martinson?
It's not going to be there.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the HLC. As you know, I've had an issue with the three-story buildings. Staff has told you that they have made a determination that these two-story buildings on top of a subterranean garage are not three-story. I think that the zoning code does not support that. And the reason for it is that if you ever check the correspondence from the applicant and agent with the city, twice they were asked to show how they could support and deny that they had three-story buildings proposed on this site. They couldn't respond, and as a result, the city decided in an email to them where they said there was considerable discussion regarding this matter, and that they had determined the two-story buildings were a separate building, and that the subterranean garage directly below it were not part of the building. I couldn't disagree more. And I think this issue is going to have to be resolved. But nevertheless, I just wanted to reiterate, as you know, in my letters regarding this. Now, the other issue that I have, and I reviewed the plans of both the northwest corner and these plans, and I know that several of you had suggested to the applicant and the architect to review some of the more prominent examples of the architecture near the site. And one, of course, would be the George Washington Smith at the corner of Mission Ridge and San Carlos. And I really wanted to illustrate, and I just sketched it very quickly on the back of the thing, but this is a suggestion to them that they try to understand that when you do a little bump out at your eave, and they just refer to it as a roof detail, and that goes back to a fun thing that you might want to laugh about back in the 60s and 70s, that you have to know your entasis from your entablature. But here is where I think that they could really make a good looking eave situation that would mimic the George Washington Smith traditional details, and at the rake end, where you are going to see some very interesting vertical masses, that it will emphasize and really help the design. Anyway, thank you very much, and I will be coming back for item 5, hopefully, and I'll just pass this in for now.
Thank you. I'll go to comments from the commission, please.
I just had one question.
That were comments, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, word comments?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't allow you to do the. You had a general question. You're allowed.
Okay. On the it's on. On the wrought iron balconies, I don't know how they're treated on the rest of the property, but have you considered how they're going to look from below when you look up at them?
Yeah, we've talked about this with Henry, and I think we might have even talked to Don Sharp about it as well. There's a feeling that we need to prevent drifts because most of these are over other doors.
Sure.
But what we're planning on doing is probably putting in a metal lattice that is visible from the bottom, so that you're not seeing, like a metal sheet, or you're not seeing, a flat bottom. I mean, I really would.
I understand.
Yeah.
I think that would be good.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see an open lattice because I really like it, but it's not practical.
No, but just
Sure.
something that sets it apart.
And that's part of when Henry went over the design with us, and I think Don also mentioned we created a metal flange around the outside that could hide some of this material that's going to waterproof from below.
Yes, Mr. Suding.
On the cottage 34A, the chimney cap detail looks a little odd to me, and I don't know if there was inspiration from the site on that, but we could restudy that. Then also, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, the chimney proportions need to be looked at very carefully. I still see where chimneys are broken up either equally or into thirds. You wouldn't see that at that level. It needs to either be up or down. I've told you this before. That's why I said at the risk of sounding like a broken record. Particularly, on places like the east elevation of 32. There are more places, so please don't come back to us showing it like this anymore.
Any other comments?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Peugeot.
Yeah, I'd like to organize the discussion a little bit about, start with the big things, and then we go to each building, and then we can make some comments and hopefully move it along. And I think from this perspective, I think the applicant really needs to be commended for doing a great job in massaging the mass Balkan scale of the site and sinking that corner and eliminating that smoothing out that southwest corner. That was very well done. It solves a lot of problems. It solves the staircases, the railings. It does great, and I really I think you've done you've done your homework there. And I think that is really very much appreciated. Regarding the overall site, I was concerned about the way you approach the driveway and the way you're working on it, and I think you're doing well. I think it's becoming more screened, more. It's just not so obvious. Before it seemed like the whole building was sticking out of the ground. Now it just seems like it's sinking into the ground. So I think that's very good. I like the way you did the iron railings. I have one comment about the sandstone. I agree with Mr. DeForest's comments on the sandstone style. I wonder if some of these walls can be canted, where the staircase is. Like I know it's hard to do, especially but if you can count it a few degrees, that adds a lot to the. It looks a lot older. Like you can at least a couple of degrees. That type of thing. I also think in the overall picture, I think one of the Forest comment was really, I think it's intriguing, the idea of the shape, the oval, as perhaps being not the most appropriate shape for the Mission Revival architecture. So I think there's something there about I don't think square works for you there, but maybe there's something else. And the idea of the shape of the fountain going to the hexagon, going back to history and trying to find a shape that works better for this style. And as far as the overall architecture, like as a general comment, for all of the buildings I have this one, is watch out for cantilevers, for major cantilevers. I mean, those are really not appropriate for cottages. I mean, sometimes in some places, you go with a major cantilever with the big beams and all that stuff, like you see in, I think El Paseo has some of that. But those are not cottages. In a little cottage, cantilevers are, and you have maybe a little bit too many of those. And then I have comments. Oh, another general comment is on the. I agree with the comment on the retaining wall, the 7 and 8 foot retaining wall on the north side that needs to be broken down into a 4 and a 4. I mean, maybe 2 walls. It's just too much. I have those comments on the site. I don't know if everybody wants to comment on the site, and then we move on to the cottages, because I don't want to mix the big comments with the little comments, and sometimes you start losing the hierarchy. Mm-hmm.
If anyone has different comments on the site, they'd like to add them.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Drury.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I think it's come a long way. The 2 comments I have, it is a broken record. The elevations to the south and the east and the west, I don't really see a lot of sun protection. And I'm thinking of particularly winter sun, and I think that needs to be reflected in these drawings. There needs to be sun protection for these windows. And
that's on all buildings, right?
All the buildings, yes. These are. I mean, I know that there's going to be landscape and so on, but that sun in the wintertime is pretty intense from the south. The other thing I think Chairperson Naylor said about the plaza. These buildings are clustered. They're the most concentrated cluster of buildings on the whole site. And I think there needs to be some relief. I would support the idea of not having a fountain whatsoever in that plaza. Thank you.
I have some comments about the site.
Okay, in addition?
In addition, I feel that the simple lawn and the fountain, I feel that it doesn't have enough character for that central space in the site. The simple circle and the simple oval, it feels a little commercial to me. And the other general note I would like to make is, as far as the canopy trees, I saw Quercus virginiana. I'd like to see Quercus agrifolia, the coast live oak, the native oak to Santa Barbara Hills, incorporated more and included in that canopy mix. And I do appreciate some of the changes they made to some of the walls, especially on the south and west of the site. The other point I want to make and reiterate is I think where you're using stone, this is a great opportunity to show a creeping, attaching vine on stone to soften the stone. So as a general note, that a plant material like that, whether it's some kind of Boston ivy or some kind of creeping fig, would do well to soften some of the look of the stone. In combination, stone and creeping vines can be quite brilliant. So find those opportunities to do that.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Sudi.
To play off of Commissioner Peugeot's comment about the importance of the stone and how that stone is cut. It's also Mr. DeForest's comment. I think it is important that you start thinking about detailing that or drawing up an elevation of that so that the larger stones are at the bottom. It's not a complete ashlar pattern, and you need to look at some of the stonework that's up in the Mission Ridge or Mission Canyon area, as well as along Mission Ridge and the Riviera in general. There's some good examples and there's some bad examples, but for that height, the wall, the larger blocks go at the bottom, and then they progressively get smaller. And to respond to Commissioner Adams' comment about a clinging vine on the stonework, I don't necessarily have a problem with that, but it seems like I want to see the stonework too. So perhaps the deciduous clinging vine is a better selection, so that at least you do see that there's more tracery than covering the whole thing.
Thank you. Are there any other site remarks?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just several. I realize that we can't design this grouping of buildings here at our meeting, and I appreciate the amount of work and effort that's gone into it thus far. It could be so much more if we had more time and input to make it really sing, and it's not quite there yet, but you got to call a halt to it somewhere. My concerns are, I believe we do need a more variety of eave details, and I'm a little disappointed that instead of lowering some of the roofs to get a varied plate height, they raised the roofs, which throws off the height between the top of the windows and the fascia or the horizontal eave line to where it's not in the same proportion, and that bothers me quite a bit. I do think the metal flange at the bottom of the balconies needs to be raised. You had mentioned 4 inches at one point with the clavos. I think it should be at least 6 inches.
I think actually it is 6 in our drawings.
And maybe even 8, depending on... It reduces the picket height, and as we saw in the last project, that is more traditional. I would have liked to have seen more recessed doors, especially the arch doors, so you saw a splayed wall going back into the door, which is very traditional, instead of it just more or less being on the surface of the 8-inch wall, or at least back 4 or 5 inches. And I agree with Alex about the cantilevers. They seem excessive, and we commented on this last time, I believe, that you really can't have a 5-foot recess on the first floor and make it seem realistic, in my opinion. And lastly, the downspouts don't always have to be at the very corner of the structure. They can be moved over to where they can be more of a sculptural item, especially if they have a leader box at the top of them. So you use that as part of your ornamentation on the building in lieu of just shoving it in the corner at each time. It really helps break up the exterior elevation, their copper and their quality, and you want to show that off as much as possible. That's all.
Madam Chair?
Ovis?
Just to follow up on what he was just saying, the drawing that Trevor Martinson just put out is historically accurate for George Washington Smith building. He tended to pull the cap tiles over the gutters. What that does is it breaks up the sharp edge of the gutter, and also when you get the sunlight in a certain angle, it makes a nice pattern on the edge of the building. If you remember when they replaced the roof on the Arlington Theater Tower, the shadow line used to be very, very, very rustic, and when they put the new roof on, they put it on with a straight edge straight across, and really ruined the effect. So I would just like to point out that I don't know how you detailed those cap tiles, but that is historically accurate to do, and it does make a nice finish.
Okay. Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Adams?
I'd like to just clarify the vines that I was requesting is a balance. I totally agree with Commissioner Suding. It's a balance. It's not to hide the stone completely, but just hint at some softening in corners, edges, things like that.
Thank you. I'd like to summarize this because I don't think I'm able to do it later. In general, we all appreciate the effort you have made to modulate the raised garage and what it does to the topography. In terms of the site, you're cautioned to start thinking about the retaining walls with regard to their stonework pattern, and the suggestion is made to cant the wall. That the plaza or the geometric landscape circulation pattern that you have shown should be relooked at, which I know that Katie is doing. There have been suggestions about whether the fountain should be there at all, what the shape of the fountain should be, and I'm sure that Katie will be exploring this. It is felt that the north retaining wall is too high, and you should look at moderating that wall. In terms of the landscape, there's been a suggestion to use more native oaks, to use the decorative effect of a deciduous creeping vine on the walls. In terms of the buildings overall, you're requested to restudy your chimney caps and their proportions, to look at your use of cantilevers and the probable excessive depth that you are showing for them. There's a request that you look again at your sun protection on your south, east, and west elevations. We'd like more variety in your eave details. There's a concern that all your eaves have been raised and none have been lowered. There's a request to increase the metal flange depth to 6 or 8 inches. We'd like to see more recessed doors and openings, and we're suggesting that you look at locating those downspouts in other areas other than the corner.
Okay, Chair, we can go over some of the drawings. I have some comments, specific comments to some of the buildings. If we can add them, would that be okay?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
So we are running late.
Just a correction on the flanges. It's the flanges at the base of the iron rails.
Okay, I have a comment on 32. Let's see, starting in, 32, right,
One more.
Okay, 2 comments on that. I like the way you did the Monterey balcony. I find it odd to have one of each.
Okay.
You know, I understand you have different needs, and one has a roof, the other has a roof. I just find it totally odd. I mean, like a builder would have not done it like that. It just seems contrived. You know, so.
Okay.
And the other comment is the balcony, Monterey balconies have great details, and there are some very good ones in town. One of the nicer ones is on the La Guerra Plaza, facing City Hall. It is most beautiful. I mean, you look at, especially the way the corbels are worked. Usually they have longer eaves. They have great rafter tails sticking out like a couple of feet, because the whole idea is to provide more shade. And the corbels are different level. I'm not sure. Maybe it's just the way it's drawn. It doesn't look very good here. This also happens in 33. You have the same thing with Yeah, like for instance, the same idea that the eaves have to be longer, and the corbels that hold the most weight, they're under the post. Those are double corbels and bigger, and the ones in the middle can be smaller.
Right.
So they have, and they have. Look at the one de la Guerra. If you get a chance to stop on your way home or something, yeah, it really it's very well done. And on 34, I have a something that. Oh, wait a second, 33. Are we going back to 33?
Yeah.
It seems that this is an interesting thing. And usually this cap is a little bit wider, maybe the same width as those.
Okay.
You know, it goes up and flat. But right now it seems a little bit out of scale.
Okay.
In 34, I have a couple of comments on 34. One is like the shape of this. It's if you're going to hold that, I think it should be more like a curve, and maybe not with this cap. It just seems like the rigidity of the stone cap with the plastic movement of this mass. It's not there yet. I think it should kind of go. Have more. It was mentioned also the conflict here of continuing the cap, and I think this could be massaged. This is the comment on the cantilever. I think this here is where it works, where it really doesn't work. It's just like it is too much for the cottage, in my opinion. And also I have a comment on the B, on the next one. 34B. Like this doesn't look like a front door. Like if that's your main door, you gotta put a little roof, do something. It just looks like that poor guy, just got the bad wall. Like whoever got that key is not the one. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other specific building comments?
Yeah. Let's look at 34B. Are we on there?
Yep.
Okay. I'm not. The tower looks. I don't know what process we've exactly been on this tower, but it doesn't feel. It just doesn't feel right. It feels too maybe too simplified. It maybe needs something. It's just not working for me now. Okay, and a general note about the raised planters around, and this is a specific comment. Be sure to use as tall a plant material as you can for those. I guess that's a landscape comment, but it's specifically to those raised planters. As long as you have 3 feet, do as much as you can with that 3 feet. And then on 34A, it's just a minor comment, the lantern over the door. It seems too close to the top of the door. And for building 33 on the north elevation, I like scallop designs, but I'm not sure it fits on that building unless it's integrated a little bit more. I saw it on the north elevation. I didn't see it in other places. I don't know that there's a big point of doing scallops unless it's sort of incorporated.
Mm-hmm. Let's go back to that.
33.
Yeah, it's 33, the north elevation. Okay, so anyway, it just seems isolated, and the detail, though I'm not sure it works on just that one side unless it's incorporated in a major way on the other elevations.
Sorry, I thought I had it included inspiration.
Well, you could be inspired, but again, I think that the main point is if you're going to do the scallop, it should be integrated to other parts of the building. What I'm finding is there's a bag of tricks that are being used on these buildings, and I'd like to see these buildings all around the sides be a little bit more consistent, though there are different needs for awnings and whatnot, but I think that should be looked at. I have an issue with just the scallop on the north side.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Drury.
I have a question
Well, we can go back to questions.
Well, I have a specific question on a specific building.
Please do.
32, so A320902. I just need to be sort of led through the. If we go up the stairs on the north elevation. If we go up the stairs, that's a landing, and is there a door there?
Yes.
Okay. And then this represents on the east elevation represents that door. This line right here.
No.
No. There's also a door in the.
Correct.
Not that one?
No.
Okay, so that's the window there. And that's the window there, that one. Okay. I don't know if this is any clearer to me, but thank you.
Are there any other comments with regard to specific buildings?
There was a light fixture that was way up on the wall, and I had shown it down. 34. It's 34. Just make sure that comes down to where you can change the light bulb. Like you have done here.
Right.
Are there any other comments with regard to the buildings?
Madam Chair, where do you see this going? Is it going to the preliminary, back to the committee, back to the final review? On where is this? Where the subcommittee decides to is thinking?
Well, I guess that's at the discretion of the commission at this point. We were thinking that it was probably ready for preliminary, if I remember correctly. Does that seem right to Commissioner Drury, Commissioner Naylor, and Commissioner Sharp?
I'm a little concerned about some of the larger issue comments, such as the eaves and the raising and lowering the roofs. That's not a...
It's not a detail.
Right. But so it's unfortunate that we have a mix of larger issues.
Is the site ready? I mean, do you see the site as being kind of ready for it?
Well, I think that the biggest problem is that wall north of 32 and 33. But otherwise, yes, the site I think is no, because the central courtyard there too is still a big issue. So no, the site's not ready.
The central courtyard, we need to work and grapple and understand that better. I think that's a big issue.
You want to go to the subcommittee then and resolve those issues and then come back for preliminary?
Yep.
I would make a motion for indefinite continuance for the applicants to meet with the subcommittee and resolve some of the issues mentioned, including the ones that the chair is going to list now.
Second that motion.
I'll second the motion, but I would also like to make a comment, not a very long one, to commend both the architect and the whole group of you and the subcommittee for all the hard work they've put into this, the extra hours.
Is it
That's wonderful.
is it appropriate for me to say anything right now?
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to summarize the comments. There's a general comment about all buildings in terms of landscape that we'd like to see tall plant material and the planters that will allow it. In terms of building 32, there's a preference that there not be two different types of balconies, and that you start to explore the particular character of Monterey balconies in terms of longer eaves and corbels that should reflect the structural needs of the balcony, that the scalloped caps be a bit wider. On building 33, there is a concern regarding the integration of the scallops on the north elevation into the overall design. On building 34A, there's a suggestion that the stair rail should be more curved and therefore remove the tile cap. This is an example of where the cantilevered balcony is too extreme in its depth. On the west elevation, there's a concern regarding the light fixture height and maintenance. On Building 34, the main door entry should be restudied on the south elevation, and the tower needs more character on Building 34B.
Very good.
Bravo.
That's because I used 4 sheets of paper.
We should take a vote and then let the applicant.
Yes, I think so. I'd like to take, well, the motion is on the floor. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? That motion carries. I know you understand the motion and what it means for you.
Right.
So your rebuttal or your comment is?
I'm just, we've lowered plate heights consistently in this project, and we've also shedded roofs wherever possible. We've, raised them as well, but some of the reason why we had to raise them is that we couldn't lower in other places because we have mechanical equipment over bathrooms. We start making these bathrooms with 7-foot ceilings. So I'm in a tough place here when I'm being put in a situation where I'm trying to push things down when I've already pushed them down as much as I can, without creating very strange roof lines. So I take a real, I take a little offense to that kind of comment because we've studied these roofs very carefully what we could do with them.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
May I suggest that the applicant bring some of those specific examples to the subcommittee meeting where you are having difficulty with the bathroom with the mechanical over the bathroom, and work with the subcommittee on that. I think we can work with you on that at the subcommittee level.
May I?
Yes.
So make my usual pitch. Actually did make this pitch back on July 7th when we were here for preliminary. So we have been working really hard with the subcommittee, and of course we appreciate all that time. It's a lot of time on the design team end as well, a lot of hours. We've had 5 subcommittee meetings for this portion of the property, and I was very hopeful that we're in a position where the list, this is the question I asked last time, and Mr. Suding answered me, are we at a point where we're dealing with mostly architectural details that can be worked out, where the list has gotten shorter? I'm looking at the minutes from July 7th and the amount of progress that we've made since then, and I feel that we're in a strong position for a preliminary to work out final details, the eve details. I understand you're looking for a pathway configuration that has nothing to do with the architecture of the buildings, in the sense that there's a relationship with them, but nothing. However, whatever shape we create there with our landscape architect isn't going to change how we enter into those cottages. So the building relationships are there. We've done quite a bit of work on really the problem. What I'll say was the problem area was the expression of the podium garage coming out of the ground. We really would like to put out there again a reconsideration for preliminary approval, and we will continue to work with the subcommittee on these details that we're not taking lightly. It's not that. It's just to further move this along.
Madam Chair, in response to the applicant, I agree that there are some of those things that we mentioned about the eave details and such, but I do think that the plate heights and some of the site issues are not insignificant, and they're not things that are they are not things that we should give preliminary approval to, because they do affect the mass, bulk, and scale.
Often the commission will grant a level of approval with conditions to resolve things, that the pathway is not part of that approval, the retaining wall is not part of that approval. I'm sorry, I have to really challenge the commission. It's
I understand
my role.
And we certainly want to work with the applicant in keeping things on schedule. I'm sure the neighborhood is very tired of seeing very little progress made. This is an important site, and these are important buildings. I would, I guess, be okay giving a preliminary approval with the conditions that the the chair read, but I'm not making that motion until I hear from the rest of the commissioners. I don't know, Ms. Allen, what that actually buys you, the preliminary approval at that level, because you'll probably get a preliminary approval the next time. I don't know if the 2 weeks makes that much difference to you. You still can't really move forward all that much. But I would like to hear from the rest of the commissioners if they want to give a conditional preliminary approval.
I just want to respond to that, Chair, and the Commission, is I feel like the architecture is closer. I feel like there's a bigger issue with the plaza that needs to be worked on. I'm okay with preliminary approval for the buildings, but we're told time and time again
We cannot split.
we cannot split things anymore.
We cannot split them.
We cannot split. That used to be done. It's not done anymore for various reasons of conflict. Is expected changes don't come in as anticipated, so we can't do that. But I'm just letting everyone know I'm better off with the buildings, and I have that Central Plaza really needs to be worked out. That's a big issue. And I'm not willing to give that preliminary.
Thank you. Given the fact that you did not know this, do you now understand why we are very reluctant to give?
I do, and had I
preliminary?
understood that, I would have asked Katie's office to
That's what I
bring
figured.
something back. She's at a seminar this week.
I think there was an understanding
That we could
they could be, that an issue like that could be worked out in progress towards final.
I mean, even if we give it a conditional, which isn't splitting it necessarily, it's giving it a conditional approval. I'm hesitant because some of those items are significant, particularly, the site wall above 32 and 33. I think that's very important how that plays out.
Also that cantilever over that wall too.
There's
Right?
significant issues.
All right, so one more pitch?
I don't think so.
2 weeks. Can we come back in 2 weeks?
Oh, well, if you want to come back in 2 weeks, you certainly can. That means you need to work with the subcommittee in 1 week, unless you
you're
want to skip
available.
the subcommittee.
Make ourselves available.
Okay, I appreciate that.
All right.
I just
So the motion
don't
for
wanna-
2 weeks, changed to 2 weeks then?
Yes, the motion has been changed to 2 weeks, and the subcommittee will meet in the next week.
So the motion is changed to 2 weeks, right? Okay.
Thank you. And now the next item is... Oh, all those in favor? I thought we did.
No, I think you did vote because
Opposed, abstained, we all voted. It was just a discussion about... The next item is review of the addendum to the Historic Structures Site Report by Alex Cole.
no, you can get the color version. In color version.
That was right over my head.
The in color version.
No,
Casey, we need that.
perhaps Mr. Martin.
We're taking the in color version. Okay.
It's just gone. Okay.
Historic Structures Report.
Is there someone here to present that?
I didn't realize they were traditionally presented, but I know Alex Cole had reviewed the draft with Jake, and we knew that she wouldn't be here
Generally
today.
here to answer questions. They don't present it, but they're generally here to answer questions. Madam Chair, do you want me to just make my
Yes, please.
petition? Okay.
I don't know.
This is regarding the northwest corner, which you northwest corner, which the plans that you reviewed the last time you saw the northwest corner roads. It's been a little while. What we did is we had Alex Cole prepare an addendum to the historic structures report to make a determination as to whether there would be a potential impact or not. The report analyzes the project using the Secretary of the Interior standards and basically concludes that give you the exact, well, concludes that give you the exact conclusion. Okay. The proposed utility distribution facility, that's a good one, Back-at-house cottages meets the Secretary of the Interior standards and therefore is considered less than significant Class 3. And that's what the report concludes.
Thank you. Are there any questions? There are none. I'll take a motion. Oh, just a moment. I forgot. Mr. DeForest, you'd like to speak on item number 4.
I think this chair needs some minutes.
Quick brain food. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you,
take it
Kellum
down the way.
DeForest. Just to, I believe 2 comments on page 2 where Mrs. Cole talks about Charles Frederick Eden. One of the points, besides the items that she indicates that he planted, he was very interested, and in the use of eucalyptus trees, especially on the Riviera, and this is documented, and I could provide it if needed, that he liked the verticality of the eucalyptus trees, that this was a very important architectural or landscape element that he promoted. And he was a big fan of eucalyptus trees, and that should be noted that that was part of his landscape plan along with the items there. And then on page 5, where she says in the fashion of the time, but they had, besides being fashion, it was a fashion to use them, it also was to provide verticality in a era when the Riviera and much of Santa Barbara, especially the Riviera area, was horizontal. Thank you.
Thank you. Did I have a motion?
I have a comment.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Yeah. On page 6, it talks about the standard number 9, and I just want to say how I agree with the comment that the standard is that new construction shall not destroy spatial relationships that characterize the property. And one of the keys of this corner is what comes later on the second paragraph. It says, the opening to the underground parking garage has been screened from view by ample landscaping and the use of a curved driveway, thereby minimizing the change to the entrance driveway. So I'm going to be looking for that in the plans and in the final, because when it talks about spatial relationships, it's not something that already exists, but that the new does not create a different spatial relationship that will affect the historic setting. But I think that's the key thing in this report, and I just wanted to mention. I'll make a motion to approve the report.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? That motion carries. Go to item number 5. Final approval of the northwest corner back of the house portion of the project. This project requires compliance with Planning Commission Resolution number 03409. And I'll caution you, if you should get it, that you will have a 10-day appeal period.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Studer.
According to my records, the subcommittee has not reviewed this independently
Right.
as the full commission.
Right.
Here's the.
Look at the color ones.
Yeah.
Put those. Yeah. Robert, one more slide. Sorry.
Oh, really big. Oh, where's the fingers? Oh, yeah.
There you go. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Welcome back, Mr. Mayor.
All right. So we're here for final approval on the cottages and the parking garage at the UDF.
utility distribution facility. And these cottages are primarily back-of-house spaces for the facility. 37's at the north, and that is primarily storage and employee facilities. The central cottage is primarily managerial, office manager, and the southern cottage is again offices, but it's primarily taken up with a cooling tower shaft that runs through the middle. So there's underneath this section. Underneath this section of the middle of the roof, there's a silencer that the air goes through before exhausting out of the roof. There were some sheets that we did change out, I believe 2 days ago. This sheet A00.02 was one of them. We updated the site to better reflect the actual topography that the civil engineer has given us. And I apologize for how graphically it shows. It's showing as kind of layers, and these aren't meant to be steps. It's meant to be kind of a smooth site. But it helped us to facilitate getting it in our model and making sure it was accurate. So, and as you said, we had these drawings with us when we were in subcommittee last week. We had gone through these elevations with Henry. There was a comment previously that the cottages needed more detail and were utilitarian, and that we needed to look at the original cottage elevations that Henry did and kind of inspire back to that.
I'm going to read those comments very quickly because several of us were not at this meeting. Preliminary approval in the back of the house. The Commission is pleased with the direction the project is going. Simplify the details, in particular for the dormers and the awning. Add more character to the design in general to be more in keeping with the previous preliminary approved renderings. The raised planters may be both in plaster and stone and shall be more organic in shape and varied in their locations. The retaining wall at the northwest corner should have a more organic shape. Reduce the plate heights as appropriate. Restudy the north elevation facing Mission Ridge Road, and historic resource findings were made.
So if you open up to A1205, these were the original concept elevations that Henry proposed for the site. And I've also, this is one of the sheets I added. I also added A1206, which is just a sampling of 4 cottages of similar size, just so you guys have a comparison for the level of detail. I thought it was good for me to look back at them and perhaps for you guys as well. So what I'll do is I'll go back to the. Do we need to look at the site first? As far as reviewing or.
Is there any request to be looking at the site?
I have a question on it, if you can explain it to me.
Sure.
How do you soften the, like it would be like this corner, that, how do you do that? How do you transition from dirt to some, you know what I'm saying? Like if it's going to be paved and this is not, is this line visible?
Well, this is actually, this drawing right here is shown with all the taken away.
But this one shows, where do you change surfaces and how sharp are these corners, therefore not blending? That's in the chest. How do you blend this structure into the landscape smoothly without seeing all these sharp angles?
Maybe we should see the landscape plan.
Yeah.
Because I think that probably gives a description that nothing else is going to help us understand.
Where is that?
The
last page.
Last page, Michael.
So if you take a look, the dark dashed line represents the edge of the garage, and it's actually buried up to this point. So,
I think it's completely buried
is
now.
it completely
It's
buried now?
completely
I'm
buried.
sorry. It's completely buried now, so you will not see that edge. It will be completely covered. Well, we have ground cover anywhere that's technically on top of the garage level, and then on the edge we'll have some more soil, so we'll be able to transition into taller screen shrubs and...
So you really won't see the shape of the...
No. No.
Okay, another thing, now that I have the microphone, another thing that, I was kind of wondering, how exactly does this thing look? Like coming in and then you have a wall there, like a plaster wall. That I saw
Do you have the
how,
model of that?
Yeah, like this thing, like how does that work?
Well, let me go to
There,
the
better.
aerial.
The aerial, yeah.
Yeah, that... I think, is that a wall there?
Yeah, this is
There-
like a low stucco wall.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you drive in, you see like what does the thing look like? And
What you
how
have
do you deal
across here is a railing with I believe it's a hedge, a fairly structured hedge
Mhm.
that basically covers this whole thing. We're showing it as, in my model, as being a translucent wall, just right now.
It will be a clipped hedge, yes, with a railing in the middle of the hedge. So it will read as just kind of a low green wall sticking up.
this is sandstone? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
And this is sandstone.
Right now, it's
or
shown
concrete
as stucco concrete.
stucco. Because I just have the same feelings about this thing as with the other previous, the harshness of the approach. Like you can put a low plant in there, I'm sure, a foot. It's just like you did on the other ones. I think like it softens it. I'm sure I made those comments earlier. Right? I mean, it's not the first time I'm... Oh, okay, so there is some... Oh,
Yeah.
you
There
already have
is
that. Oh, okay, I
on-
see. You already have that, okay.
And we do have vines that will grow out over the tops of the wall.
And this is the
also.
side that you'll see
Correct.
most from the main building.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Should we move on to buildings?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Well, there's a couple more things on the landscape plan if
Okay.
you want me to.
We don't want to give you a short shrift.
I just wanted to respond to the comments from the last meeting. There was a comment regarding using various materials on the planters, stone and stucco. So I've now called out where those different conditions occur and tried to vary it so that from the street view, it's not all stone or all stucco. It's both.
So you have plaster here and stone here on the
Correct.
same building.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Stone on this side. I've also modified the sizes of the planters on the north side of each of the cottages. This one got considerably larger, this as well, and the shape of this one was modified to better suit the walk in front of it. And then also regarding the hexagonal shape of this wall, that wall was removed completely with the new grading scheme.
There also were retaining walls at the north end that had been removed as well.
Okay. Go ahead. I have a question.
Go ahead.
Simple question. Okay. What's really nice about this plan is you have some accent plantings in this ground cover. Say it's a ceanothus or rosemary or something. Is there a reason you're not doing the accent groupings on this north side? Is there some major reason? I'm just curious. If there's not, that's fine.
Honestly, I don't know.
Yeah,
It was
okay.
something that
No, that's
Katie
fine.
might have designed, and
No,
I
that's
haven't looked at that in particular.
Okay, let's move on to the buildings. Oh, sorry.
Very well. Closing the door.
So again, just a quick overview of 37, 38, and 39, and how they're broken up internally as we expect they'll be. And maybe we'll just take a quick look at the garage real quick. The ramp coming down. We've, in this case too, we've increased the angle to bury the building, similar to what we did in Mission Village. We brought the corner down. So basically, we're maintaining the higher head height down here at the south end, where we have our ADA spaces, and our ADA ramp out to the south, and area refuge at the north for our second exit. And I think this actually was stapled together a little early. These are actually sections through the entire site. I was going to go through the cottages one by one first. So, okay. So, in general, the last time you guys looked at this project, the floor to ceiling height was 9 foot on all of the buildings, and we have decreased it to 8'6" typically. We did increase or leave this portion on your left on the north elevation at a higher elevation because we do have a stairwell that's coming up here, and we're trying to maintain head height in this location. There were comments on the north elevation. We had a really large stucco cover over the sliding doors. We tried to simplify that and did a set of 2 doors that would basically stack here to your left to get our full 12-foot opening for all of our switchgear that is required. This elevation, as you'll see in the side elevations, is very shaded. So as we move down to the south elevation, there was we did break up the roof line where there had been more of a continuous roof across the south elevation on the left side or actually on your right side, and we changed the roof, or we dropped the roof line in the middle, shedding it down, and removed the dormer that was breaking the sill plate or the top plate. And that should not be there. So, and in this case, we just enlarged and elongated some of these windows that had been square and made them more rectangular, as is in the west and east elevations. And the east elevation is going to be fairly heavily planted out as well. This is along the path that faces Cottage 29. So that's 37. This is Cottage 38. The major changes on Cottage 38 is when Henry and I went back and looked at the exhaust shaft, which is extending up out of the north elevation as a chimney. We decreased the height as much as we could, and we actually kind of elongated the planter to align to it. We had some vents that we removed, and we've replaced the treatment of the top of the vent with an upturned tile detail, and tapered the ends in. And then on the south elevation, we extended and shedded down the roof over the entrance. And again, I think on the east elevation, we had a more square window that had been behind bars there. That is... Oh, I have a line. I thought I caught them all. So that is Cottage 38. All right, and in Cottage 39, this is the one that has the cooling exhaust coming out of it, and in this case, we've on the west elevation, we've increased the depth of the windows, And again, we also had another sort of vent treatment that Henry thought was unnecessary, and we simplified it to a kind of a more tilted tile trim around the perimeter of the top, and it has a small cap around it as well. Not cap, but a cornice. And on the south elevation, there was a request to restudy the opening that faces the main building. So this is the opening that Henry suggested, going from, we had kind of a door that was going to be not truly functional. We've switched to a window with a plinth underneath it that faces the main building. And uniformly throughout, we've added downspouts and gutters to the buildings.
Do you have anything else to say?
That's primarily it.
Okay. I'm going to ask for public comment. The first person will be Mr. Martinson, the second person will be Mr. DeForest, and the third person will be Mr. Nazarian. I'm going to ask that you please restrict your remarks to pertinent issues as we are running behind.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. The big issue here is, and I'm going to ask the committee itself, did anyone in staff tell you that Cottage 29 is now a 3-story building? Because the last 3 words on this says, and underneath Cottage 29. That means there is a storage, mechanical room, etc., underneath the 2-story building. And I think we could get back to the perspective. It would be very easy to visualize that Cottage 29, that big, ugly 2-story structure adjacent to these 3 cottages, which is new, it's a new cottage, is now 3-story and cannot be allowed in the RH zone. As you know, only one building can be 3 stories. That's the main building, which right now is in...
Mr. Martinson, I think you're repeating yourself at this point.
All right, I repeated myself, but I think it was worth reiterating. So, as a result, no one has answered my question, but the question is, did anyone tell you that Cottage 29 was a 3-story building?
Okay.
Don't hear anything, so I assume that no one has been told. Now you have. Thank you.
Mr. DeForest?
Kellum DeForest. Point number 1 is the walls to the underground garage, the retaining walls, I feel, or stone-faced or stone, but I think they probably would have to be stone-faced, are needed there to as a transition from the Craftsman style main buildings. Craftsman style did not use concrete walls, as you surely all know. Then, following up on Commissioner Peugeot's comment, how is the garage entrance to be screened? And thirdly, as I previously commented on, the importance of the eucalyptus trees as a design element of El Encanto. And I would like to ask the landscape architects on the commission how the eucalyptus trees, which usually plants have difficulty growing under, how is that going to be solved? Because how do you get all this plant material that's indicated on the plan and retain the eucalyptus trees. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Forrest. Mr. Nazarian?
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Arian. I actually had, as you know, that we made an agreement with Encanto, 2 changes on the northwest corner, and looked like they've done it to the, so far as cottages and all that, and underground parking, we are right. But I just saw in a drawing here, there are some kind of elevations in next to the cottage 39, steps going up. Is it the land being elevated at that area? Because I was looking at it, there's some steps, about 7 or 8 steps or something, which was not part of our agreement, one or the other to be.
No, this is unfortunately it's a kind of a graphic thing. It's what each one of these steps represents is how the foot by foot topographically how this hill is sloping down.
Okay.
So there's no stepping here.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
So I just looked like a step to
No.
That's that. The second thing about eucalyptus trees, that I know that the debate about eucalyptus trees being historical, not historical, they've been there. Eucalyptus trees not historical to California, Santa Barbara anyway. And some of them are really dangerously grown, and I heard that there have been some agreement, some of them be cut down, some of them be retained. And more or less, all in all, I just came here that we support the project as a neighbor. And if they make sure that if the walls are being made of the stone and the stone work that you're talking about, everybody just very careful to be in line with the historical nature of the Mission region, our area, and I'll be all right. I get you guys so meticulous that look, nothing going to escape your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming. We'll go to questions from the Commission.
I got some questions.
Good.
What's the lighting of the garage like? The interest is, what do you see from outside? Usually trying to avoid the glow coming out of the hole of the garage. What does that work? How does that work?
Well, the drawings I've seen, we're pretty far along with construction drawings for this. Actually, very far along. We're trying to hold back some of the light from the opening so that we don't get a lot of light bleeding out of the building. Oh, sure. We're trying to hold the lights back from the opening so that there's not a lot of light bleeding out of the building.
Do you have them in the plan or something that you can see or something you can produce later on?
Yes, we can. Yeah, we do have reflected ceiling plans with the lights on them.
I think that I would like to see that. Okay. It's a question comment, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
This is a question for staff, and I really just, I guess, want them to respond to Mr. Markinson's concern about cottage 29, or building 29, and the 3-story element there.
Yeah, this one, of course, isn't part of this. This was cottage 29 is not part of the northwest corner, but it's shown because it's associated with it. It's right next to it. You gave final approval many weeks ago, but it's not. It's a 2-story building. It does have understory basement area.
That's why I said he was repeating himself. Okay, are there any other questions? No, this is here for final. Comments, please? Oh.
I just make a general comment. I counted 20 planters attached to buildings. I wonder if that was a bit of a proliferation of planters. That was a comment and a question.
Is that a
Thank you.
enumeration?
Perhaps we could eliminate some of those planters. Thank you.
Can I respond to Commissioner Drury?
I mean, discuss it, yes.
And a point of discussion. Every planter on this building is worth it because it affords the opportunity for better plant material, better screened. I understand your point, but the more plants on these particular set of buildings, the better. That's the way I'm seeing it. It's an opportunity.
Should I erase your comment, or?
No.
Oh, you would still like to do it. All right. All right.
Doesn't mean I don't like. I don't want to see more plants. Just too many.
I see. All right.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Sudi.
On building 39, the south elevation, if we could turn to that. And then I'll have a landscape question or comment. I'm sorry. South elevation. I do think that this looks much better than what we were seeing originally. However, I think that the plinth underneath this, tucked behind, is superfluous. So it is probably better if it just is a window that's set back and has a splay on the sill, something like that. But doing both the in and the out, the in and the outie is a little confusing. Then let's go to the landscape plan. And if I could just slip in here. Ms. Miller, if we could just break this line, I understand what's happening here, that this is into Mother Earth and this is over a roof. But if we could sort of break this line here, because I think it just sort of accentuates that something underground is happening. So maybe eliminating, 2 shrubs here, maybe, staggering this a little bit more. Just play with that a little bit. And, you can get that shrub a little closer to the wall so that it goes over. The comment is to break that difference in planting height along the underground garage wall. That's it, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair. Comments. Let's see. So what I'd like to see happen with the landscape, this is of course, the landscape plan, is I really like how you've incorporated succulent or very drought-tolerant accents in front of there. I think that should move around in a few selected groups to the north side. I think that'll look really great. Incorporate that in the ground cover. I'm very supportive of your ground cover, ceanothus or rosemary there.
Excuse me, could you repeat that? Incorporate more succulents to the...
more accents.
I see.
More accents to be consistent with the, let's see, what's this, Alvarado planting scheme.
Okay.
Just bring it around, integrate it around both sides. The second comment is I'd like to see coast live oak incorporated in the canopy tree screen in a significant way. I know there's just a few canopy trees shown, but I'd like to see coast live oak as a choice in that mix. Let's see, I appreciate the fact that as many eucalyptus trees are being saved. And just to answer a question about what grows underneath, I believe these eucalyptus are going to be pruned, so it may not be all the eucalyptus presence may not be all that harmful to what's growing underneath it, because they should be safety and fire pruned. But anyway, let's see. Again, general note for the raised planters to use as tall of a plant as possible, not in front of windows, but on wall elevations. And I just appreciate all the landscape solution to this rather than walls. I really appreciate where the subcommittee and especially the landscape architect has come to on this. This is very, very soft, and I think it's really a nice solution.
Thank you. Any other comments with regard to the buildings of the landscape? Remember, this is here for final, so...
Madam Chair.
Yes.
One really quick comment. It's been my experience that tall retaining walls coming down to this garage and the other one should be battered.
Okay.
When you open that up a little, you get a little more sky, you have more light coming down, the plants look a little more natural coming up a slightly battered wall. And it's been my experience, if a wall is vertical, it almost looks like it's coming in on you. And this relieves that feeling and just takes away the harshness of it. And also, you're now introducing landscaping at the base of 2 very tall retaining walls. and thus eliminating a footing coming out toward here, toward the driveway. Either your engineer's going to want maybe planting pockets in the footing rather than having to have all of his footing to the rear, and so you should be careful to make sure that there's enough of those planting pockets, not 20 feet apart, but 6 feet, 8 feet apart, that will accommodate the landscaping you want to have there. That's all.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, just one
Yes.
quick comment to add to Commissioner Adams' comment about the eucalyptus understory. The landscape architect needs to select plants that have proven to survive under eucalyptus understory. I'm fairly certain that they have. I did look at the plant palette, but just to be sure that we get a good landscape there, one that's going to survive.
Thank you. Yes.
I have a question for the commission. Are we approving the material and the construction of the driveway at this point? Are we giving that final?
I don't know. Is it part of the description for
it's
this
sort
final?
of a great, I don't know.
Well, it hasn't been called out as to what it is.
Yeah, what is it?
Well, we're showing it right now as stucco.
What about the driveway surface?
The drive surface.
Okay.
And the wall material and...
Wall material, you say, is stucco.
Excuse me? The wall material of the driveway, the opening,
This one here.
is stucco.
Yes.
Wow.
And then the landscaping becomes very critical.
My comment would be then that there are walls at the bottom of the Swain, there are walls proliferating the area that are made out of beautifully dressed sandstone. That, no?
Well, yes, there are. I would also like to point out, though, that there are board form concrete walls that are at the intersection of Moreno and LeSwain that are quite nice, too. I personally am not in favor of the stucco treatment. I think it should either go board form concrete or sandstone. I don't think stucco's the solution.
I would agree.
I would support that as well, that comment as well. Absolutely.
I would go with sandstone because it's more reliable at this point. I think
It's more attractive.
Well, like I think when you think of concrete, you probably think of the with the bore marks and the lines, and the third is kind of concrete, which you're never going to get now. But at least in sandstone, I think you know what you get.
And that's if this is part of this final
This is
approval.
at their front end. This is at their front door, pretty much. So they
And also the surface should be something besides concrete. Not sure what, but so I'm fine with it. I think they've done a great job with improving with the buildings. I think the buildings are great. The landscape is great. I think what is not totally resolved are the walls, the entrance, and the lighting. And if that can come back to another meeting and you get at least a final, so you can get into the building department and start moving, maybe there's a way to work that out.
Why don't we take it to consent?
Yeah.
But I think the direction we're interested in canted walls with sandstone and another material for the driveway. Either, I'm not sure what. And some kind of lighting that is not glaring, that does not cast a lot of light to the outside the side, it has to be very gradual as you approach the driveway. It could have lights on the sandstone walls, so you start lighting the ground, but not jumping at you like you usually see with the fluorescence coming out of the underground. So that's the direction to if it goes to consent.
Mr. Puccio, would you like to make the motion?
And I just want to make a point that canted walls look best in stone. They don't necessarily look that great in concrete or stucco, although you see small planters with cants. But usually that's a stone, a masonry issue.
Another possibility would be stone buttresses and plaster battered walls in between, similar to the Mountain Drive retaining wall.
Yeah.
To where you get a mixture and then your landscaping, everything gets broken up a little bit that way. And it's less expensive than just a mass of sandstone, which tends to become too much after a while.
That's a good point.
Okay.
Excellent point.
Can we send this to consent in any way, or how, for final in consent, or how does it work? Or
I feel
final
that these
now?
are mainly just details that, you know.
They're big
details.
and expensive details.
Yes, but it's not like we have a problem with the massing or the plate elevations or plate heights or anything like that. So.
Is someone making a motion for final and consent?
I'll make a motion for final consent with the comments
wait.
that we made.
He's final on, what's the motion again?
Final with details to
Final with details as commented to return to consent.
Second?
I'll second that.
Can you list the details?
Yeah. And what driveway surface would be acceptable to the commission? Very important for the consent person to know that.
What was the original surface you
Well,
I believe it was in some places mostly asphalt, but then also at the entrance, I think where it was somewhat steep, it was probably, or it is probably a combination of concrete with brick bandings, and it was broken up by brick. In fact, that's what I was going to suggest for this driveway, is that you do it like a salt finish concrete, something with some grip. Don't do a broom finish. I think that's inappropriate. And then break it up with significant common red brick banding.
Are we allowed to comment?
Can I comment or respond?
Okay. We're talking about a motion here.
So let us.
And then batter the walls? That's
craft
I think
the
that's-
motion.
So they're not vertical.
Well, it's up to them.
Is it?
Yeah.
It was, how far do we go with this?
Okay.
Is there a motion being?
There is a motion for final on consent with the following comments.
No, not final on consent.
Oh,
To return to consent
return
in
to
consideration of
commission
final
for-
details per the comments, which is,
Goes to consent for details.
yeah, it goes to consent, which is driveway walls, driveway surface,
Garage lighting.
garage lighting, landscape comments and inclusions. What else? What was important?
I'll second the motion. Is that the end of it?
Is that, I think you got all of them.
Yeah, I think.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? That motion carries.
Okay, now you have a rebuttal, Ms. Miller.
Not really a rebuttal, just an explanation. At the roundabout, at the top of that drive, we are actually doing exactly what you had suggested with the concrete, with the brick edge. So most likely will be carried down the drive. I just need to confirm that with Katie.
Trish? Good.
Okay.
2 weeks then? I think we're going to adjourn this meeting, correct?
I move to adjourn.
Thank
All right, thank you all.